Hi. Rory O'Kane.
First, this is going to be through code examples. So first, let's set up a cast of objects. Hannah and Zach. They have names, so they have name property.
Would you mind using your microphone?
So now we have our objects. Also to set up, let's define a getName function. So now you tell me what will happen when we call n.getName. What do we get? What is printed? Yeah, that's right. So, this is Anna when the function is called. But how about Zach? So Zach originally just had a name property. Now we assigned a getName property as well, which is the same function that Anna has. And then we try to call Zach.getName. Now, what will be printed? How many think? How many think Zach? Okay, it's Zach. So the reason that happens is it refers to the parent object at the time of calling, not at the time of definition. So back here when we define n.getName equals function, it doesn't matter when that function is defined. The function is self-contained, and the fact that you're assigning to something else is incidental. So Zach.getName this equals to Zach. And if you had a function get this, you would just define the return the parent. So what if we put n.getName in a variable that isn't assigned to any object and call it? What will this name return? Close, but it'll return an empty string for two reasons. There's two steps to this reasoning. First, this in the global scope is window, and then window.name is an empty string by default unless the page has changed it. So this can be confusing if you accidentally set it to a global variable. So this is just how to understand what's happening if this accidentally happens. If your code accidentally sets it to a global variable, but in general shouldn't be trying to do this. So if you log this, you'll just get window in a browser list. But that isn't guaranteed in all JavaScript environments. Like if it's node.js, there's no window, so we don't get some things. Now, what if we have a function that just returns this and we call it the global scope? Yep, still window. And so JavaScript has the feature strict mode, which is when you start a function definition with the string use strict, and it tries to just raise errors more often than default JavaScript. And so strict mode changes this behavior if you try to log this. So anyone know what it will log in this case? Yep, undefined. And if we have this free get this, where you're not console.log this, you're console.log a function that returns this in strict mode, you know what happens? No, you're calling the function, so it's whatever the result of the function is. So return this, whatever that is. Yeah, that's what it should be, I think, but it isn't. So, and similarly, if you have get name and you try to call it even within strict mode, we'll just get window.name again. So this is kind of weird inconsistency. So strict mode is supposed to fix this accidentally referring to window by making it be undefined, but it seems it doesn't actually cover all the cases. So you can't rely on it to save you from this mistake all the time.
Rory, what if you use strict mode at the top of the file?
I think it should work the same.
Then it should like, I think it would guard you from, it would return undefined then, would it, or?
Yeah, because you use strict in the function, it doesn't carry over to like functions that you call. It's only like within this function. It should be nice if it would, let's see.
Well, I'm not actually sure. So if you define a function within a function that is strict, then you're saying it does not, the inner function is not strict?
I don't know, it might, just that example wasn't the inner function.
Okay.
I was just saying, like, if you have it at the top of the file that you're then finding like functions in, I think it would be strict mode for all of them.
We all agree behavior is insane.
Okay, so that's the basics of this. This refers to the parent object at the time of calling. So there are some methods defined on functions that can change what this is. So say we have a function add numbers, we can call it with some arguments. It'll also work exactly the same if we do add numbers dot call and define function tree. So add numbers is a function as well as just calling it. You can, it has properties because all functions are also objects in JavaScript. So dot call is a method and you can call. And apply is very similar to call, but instead of just passing arguments normally, it takes two arguments, and the second is an array, which gets splatted. It's equivalent to splatting in Ruby, the asterisk. So you can use that if you already have an array and you need to call functions if the arguments for that array. So how does that interact with this? Well, call and apply for the purpose of this talk. I'm only talking about this, not about the arguments being arrays or not. So in this talk, call and apply are equivalent. So I'm only talking about call. So what will happen, we already have this free get name, which just returns this dot name. And it came from this free get name. And if we do dot call and we pass it to Zach, then what do we get? What name? Yeah, that's how it's supposed to work. And what about, we're not using free get name, we're using analog get name, and then we're calling that on Zach. So it'll be enter Zach. Yeah, still Zach. So it doesn't remember the parent object after you use dot call. And the final method that changes the value of this is bind. So say we have this function add, it takes two parameters, and if you call bind on the function, it returns a new function, which you can store to a variable. So you can turn add, which takes two parameters, into an add6, which takes one parameter. But you can see there's also that initial undefined, which I put in that sample code. So that would be the new value of this that it's supposed to be. So we have Anna.getName, which normally returns Anna's name, and we bind it to Anna again. But then we store that in a global variable that isn't assigned to the name. So whose name will return? Yes, Anna. Now how about Zach? We take get name, we bind it to Anna, but then we put it in Zach. So yes, still Anna. Now we already had Anna, that was down to Anna. What if we say, no, I changed my mind, I want it to be down to Zach, and then we call it. And note that we're not, we're just calling read down getting. We don't have to call Anna dot or Zach dot. So that's the advantage of bind. You can, for forget the original parent object is bound to, you can just make it easier to call from then on. But anyway, so will it be Anna or Zach?
Sorry.
No. So bind is permanent. Once it happens once, it just forever remembers its binding. Or at least in the return function. Because bind returns a new function, it doesn't like mutate the original. And so finally, this talk was inspired just because I knew of the existence of apply and of bind, but then I thought, wait, they kind of conflict. They both change the value of this. What happens when you put them together? So what does happen when we put them together? We have Anna bound get me, which is bound to Anna, but then we call it with Zach. So which will it use? Anna. It was bound to Anna, so binding takes priority. But what about, it's not bound, we're not calling a method on Zach anymore. We're just doing a variable without a parent. Still on. So, yeah. So the priority is bind takes the highest priority, and then call. And then if there's not call, then it's the parent object at the time of call. So, yes, exactly this. So, and that's all I have to say about this.
So you set a property on an object to a function. Would you say is like what's implicitly happening is that behind the scenes JavaScript is taking the function and calling bind on it with the object that you're setting the property on? Is that essentially what's happening? So it's like Anna.getName equals some function. Like implicitly you're taking that function that you've done and calling bind on it with the Anna.
Well, no, I think if you did that substitution, it wouldn't always work, because as we saw, you can't bind something twice. So if you have a bound function, then that substitution model.
All right. Yeah, it's like forgetting like multiple bunches, like if I'm doing it normally.
Then,
like,
yeah.
like would that be like a reasonable thing to say? Like effectively, that's what's happening behind the scenes. Is that?
I guess so.
Okay.
Any questions? Yeah?
Yeah, can you upload these slides so I can look at them like
Yeah, sure.
step by step?
Yeah, I will.
Thanks. Considering the behavior is pretty similar, I'll apply. Is there a preferred? Is one of them preferred?
Yeah, here, as we talk about the use cases, well, apply, you only use apply when you want the feature of taking an array and expanding it out to all the arguments. So there are a few functions, like a max function. If there's a max function that takes an arbitrary amount of arguments and it gives you the maximum. If you have a list of numbers, then use apply to get the maximum of all that list. And call, I guess its only purpose is to just change the value of this at the time of calling, not introduce call. And finally, bind, it has a few different uses. One is if you have a callback that is within an anonymous function. Yeah, so say you're defining an anonymous function. I guess it would take too long to type up why, but if you're doing an asynchronous call with a callback, so you say fetch the data, and then there's a callback that gets the data, and then in that callback you say this dot, my property equals data equals fetch data dot my property. So you're trying to assign the loaded data to this. Well, since the callback was defined within another function, or sorry, since you're writing this within a callback function, not within the original function definition, then this won't refer to the object you're trying to assign it to. So if you use bind, right after you write that function literal, you could put dot bind and then the parent after it, and it would work. Although an alternative would be to just use yeah, the fat arrow.
Bar equals this. I don't know if it does that. Actually, now I look just like bar b equals this.
Oh, yeah, or self, I think is. what
Yeah,
it is.
like everybody has that.
Yeah, that's.
Everybody has their own thing.
Yeah, and bind can also be, I've also seen bind used, not to mutate the value of this, but just for its, property of making some initial arguments fixed. Like there's, one library that has a getter and setter convention where there's a function, say, would have a person with a name function, and if you call name with no arguments, it'll return the name. If you call name with one argument, it'll set the name to that. So if you can call dot, you can call bind on that, and it'll return a function that always sets the name to whatever. And if you then kind of plug in your I that says change my name to anonymous, and then it'll just do that. It's a simple way of defining that function.
We have a little bit of time, and I like to do introductions afterwards, just to make sure we have enough time. So if we maybe raise the lights up a little bit. What we also like to do with Wiki Thursday is to encourage networking, get to know each other at these meetups. So let's just go around and say a little bit about. Whoa, that was abrupt. Thank you, Kyle. So we'll go